Tom Pelissero joining us now, my cohort, my counterpart, my buddy from NFL Network. TP, how you doing, brother?
Can't believe I'm not seeing you on the back patio at the Arizona Biltmore this year, Dan.
I can't either. Have you already picked up your goodie bag?
I believe the window on that opens up at noon, and that's as far as we'll go into the details on that operation.
All right, good stuff, my friend. Hey, the agenda is always interesting. This year, rules changes on the agenda. Talk to me about something that you're keeping an eye on.
Well, I certainly think that the proposed onside kick alternative is something that is fascinating. In speaking to people, GMs, otherwise, so far at the meetings, everybody wants a little bit more information on this. Any votes are going to come down tomorrow, it sounds like, on the substantive rule changes. But think about a system where you potentially, rather than trying for an onside kick, you're trying for a 4th and 15, backed up deep in your own territory to extend the game. It sets up a fascinating sequence of situations and scenarios in which would teams actually attempt this. If you're down, 3 scores, you score, you try it again. What if you take the lead against the Packers? You don't want to see Aaron Rodgers on the field again, and so you go for a 4th and 15 to try to keep him out of the game. You can always have done this, of course, with the onside kick, and in fact, you're closer to your own goal line with this proposed alternative. But it's a very interesting debate. Certainly, you're going to have old school people who are going to be flatly opposed to the entire idea of it. But there's player safety stuff here. They've adjusted the kickoff rules, eliminating the run-up to the kickoff. That, of course, makes it harder to get onside kicks, which we saw in the numbers last year. So that's a big one. And then, of course, the various permutations of the potential changes to instant replay, none of which would have fixed what happened in the NFC title game a year ago to the Saints, but potentially expanding some of the reviewable plays and where you'd be able to challenge.
Well, that to me is the main problem is if you are going to alter instant replay, and there are a couple of proposals that have been submitted, a couple by Washington that would make everything reviewable. I don't think in terms of pace of play and time of the game that's going to pass. They want to add the review of all personal fouls as well. That's a possibility. But to me, something, Tom, that has been interesting in the AAF, and those games have aired on NFL Network, and I've been calling those for the last few weeks, is that there's a sky judge who has the ability in the last 4 minutes of a game to not only change a call, but to make a call, which would have alleviated the problem that we saw in the NFC Championship game and would have been able to correct the call. Now, in the whole 7-week season so far, the sky judge has changed exactly one call. But if that call is of the magnitude that we saw in the championship game this past year, why not have a sky judge? Yet it seems like that is not something that they're going to be considering.
Well, I think, first of all, Dan, there's always been resistance among the ownership and the competition committee to substituting one person's judgment for another. In other words, having not just objective things, not was the ball out of bounds, was his knee down, but was that pass interference? Because when you read the rules on pass interference, you have to have a material restriction of the receiver. There's some very technical terms that come down to an element of subjectivity. So we can look at the play in the NFC Championship game and say that was the most obvious play ever. And certainly it appeared to be, when you watched it, particularly from the end zone angle, it looked like an obvious call. But what about the call that's 10% less obvious than that? What about the call that's 10% less obvious than that? Every fan, every coach, every player is going to think the calls that go against them are all obvious, that they blew all of them, that the sky judge should be intervening. But kind of where do you draw the line? That's part of the the gray area that I think makes people a little bit squeamish about making that huge of an alteration. The same reason they haven't turned over those calls in the past to New York. I mean, whether it's the sky judge on site or whether it's somebody in New York, you have a big brother element that, frankly, at the time where you're seeing the NFL partnering with a casino, there's legalized gambling in a variety of places across the country. Some of the norms are changing in terms of that. If you implement a system where somebody who's out of sight can all of a sudden change a critical call in the game or throw a flag that wasn't thrown, they talk so much, Roger Goodell and others, about the integrity of the game, people believing that what they see on the field is real. Well, one way to call that into question would be having somebody who you don't even know exactly who they are or what their criteria is, making a call from not on the field.
Well, there's one word that comes to mind. It's egregious. If it's an egregious missed call or it's an egregious mistake on a call, then you have this person in the final minutes of a game who could overturn it. But I do understand what you're saying, and I think that's the major concern with everybody in the league. It's the gray area. You're right. What if it's egregious in one person's eyes, but it's not as egregious in another person's eyes?
That very term is subjective.
Right, exactly.
What is egregious? There were all plays last season. I mean, you remember when Bobby Wagner jumped over the Viking center on Monday Night Football? That was leaping. That was leverage. It should have been called, and it wasn't. If you overturn that call, you throw a flag there. Maybe the Vikings get a new possession, score a touchdown, cut into the Seahawks lead. It's a completely different game. And I remember asking people, because I was right around the December meetings, asking competition committee members about that, and they said there's no appetite for having somebody weighing in and throwing a flag that wasn't thrown on the field.
Let me ask you about Gronk. That's obviously been a big topic of conversation for us here today after he announces his retirement. And already people talking about the potential of him coming back because of his agent, Drew Rosenhaus, insinuating that could be a possibility. But you're reporting that there haven't been any actual conversations between the two about a potential comeback already.
That's what Drew said when he came on NFL Network a short time ago. He's had zero conversations with the Patriots about that possibility. But he said it's a gut feeling that he would not be shocked if we see Gronk play at some point this season. I mean, Gronk is 29 years old, but he hasn't played all 16 games since like 2011. He's missed 30-plus games. He's had a variety of injuries, all the forearm surgeries and the back issues and everything that he was fighting through last year. I mean, the guy needs a break. So it would be natural to say, okay, what if he comes back in October? What if he comes back in November? Gives him more time to rest. And then, is healthy, plays a shorter season, and is ready to go for the stretch run. I mean, all those are possibilities. Every time that we have one of these, retirement and then instant unretirement flashback talks, all I think about is covering Brett Favre from 2007
Forever.
to 08 to 09 to 10. And rumors, there was 1 year Sam Bradford gets hurt, and there was rumors about Favre. Would he come back? And the Rams making a call. This is like 2012. I mean, we did that forever. The difference is with Gronk, he is younger at this point. The question is just kind of like, what shape is his body in, and does he want to do it? He's what more can you do than what Gronk has done? I mean, win another ring, okay, but you got 3 of them.
Right.
You're an all-pro. You're going into the Hall of Fame. You got 70-plus touchdowns. At some point, does he just, does he find his calling in Hollywood or pitching stuff or, just being man about town? I mean, at least now he's taken a step back here rather than, as Rosenhaus said, he could have presented the Patriots with a plan to say, hey, what if I show up mid-August? And Gronk didn't want to do that. He wanted to step away, and so as of now, he's retired.
Well, and I feel like for a guy who plays the game with such pure joy, I think the fun has been sucked out of it to a certain extent for Gronk. I think the routine, sometimes I've had guys tell me, as I'm sure you have too, sometimes you don't want to go to work on Wednesday and bang heads with anybody. When you've been doing it your entire life, you're just ready to take that next step. And financially, obviously, Gronk's in pretty good shape. Our poll question of the day, though, TP, what would you like to see Gronk do next? I personally would like to see him take up residency at a club in Las Vegas, be kind of a host / DJ. I think he would really excel in that role. Some people want to see him wrestle. Some people want to see him go on the big screen right away. What does Tom Pelissero want to see Rob Gronkowski do now?
Well, if he wants to give his body a break, I wouldn't say wrestling. I mean, I don't want to be slammed into
I agree.
a mat. that sounds like the worst possible thing if you've got back problems. And Dan, I'm sure you've talked to him before. He's a unique personality.
Yes,
he's an extraordinarily smart guy in terms of football. You can't play for the Patriots if you're not, and all the different things they asked him to do in terms of receiving, blocking, and everything else. But then seeing that translate into Hollywood acting, maybe I'm wrong. I find it to be a unique fit. Even being an analyst or something like that, I think would be different. I mean, I certainly think as a product pitch man, he's already been doing that. That'd be a pretty easy thing to do. But I mean, Gronk tours, maybe get him.
There you go, another cruise,
boating license.
Yeah,
like a 50. Get him on like a 100-foot yacht, something like that. And it's not just the Gronk cruise. It's Gronk. He's your captain. He's showing you around. I could see him doing something like that. I mean, he's got a pretty strong brand and a pretty unique one too.
It could be Gronk cruises, Gronk flights. He could have his own personal little regional airline. It could be unbelievable.
The thing is, he's already done all this. You're trying to think what could he do? Wrestling. Well, he did that. He could do a cereal. He's already had Gronk flakes. He could do a cruise. We've already had the Gronk cruise. He's kind of done all these different things. Football hasn't precluded him from doing it. I guess the only thing that's left is seeing him on the big screen, and we'll see if it's a Howie Long firestorm situation or not.
And he's only 29 years old. All right, couple more questions. I know you're busy, then we'll let you go. Is there something unlikely that you expect to roll around, a team that is going to make a move on draft day or prior to? Something that might surprise the rest of us? Or is there some rumors, draft-type rumors that are flying around there in Arizona?
I think the most interesting thing will just be to see number one, whether or not the teams at 2 and 3, the 49ers and Jets, can get out of those pits. And this is presuming. It's not a done deal at this point, but let's presume Kyler Murray goes number 1. As much as we look at this quarterback class and we say, well, could the Giants trade back and take Dwayne Haskins? Let's be honest. You look at all the recent drafts. I believe I said this stat on NFL Network last week as all the stuff was going down with Odell Beckham. I think there's been 11 quarterbacks taken in the first round of the past 3 drafts, and 10 of them required the team to trade up to get them. So you've had all these teams packaging picks to go after quarterbacks. I wouldn't be surprised at all when it comes down to it, as good of a defensive draft as it is, if you see teams packaging picks to move up. The question is, who does it? Because a lot of the teams outside of Miami that, has the short-term solution, obviously, with Ryan Fitzpatrick, we'll see whether or not they really want to take a quarterback this year as opposed to in 2020. But who is that team that's going to go up and get one? Everybody else has you look at it and says they got a relatively settled quarterback situation. Washington would be one certainly to watch because we just don't know where things stand moving forward with Alex Smith. They brought in Case Keenum, but that's a 1-year type of a deal. Cincinnati, new coach, and Zach Taylor. He says that Andy Dalton's his quarterback right now, but could you see them make a move? Even the Detroit Lions. I mean, there's a lot of teams who you look at it on paper and say, it's not totally out of the question. The difference is there's just not 5 teams sitting there who you go, okay, they're definitely going to take a quarterback in the first.
Well, obviously, quarterback is what's going to drive our draft coverage. Dwayne Haskins to the Giants, something that's been talked about quite a bit. I've actually heard the Giants really like Drew Lock from Missouri. Don't know if 6 is too high to take Lock, and the Redskins obviously need a quarterback as well. Before we let you go, there's always something that's interesting that you see, whether it's in the lobby or whether it's in the bar, and without getting anybody in trouble. I'll give you just 2 examples, right, when I was there, okay, of things that I saw. One was Gavin Newsom, formerly the lieutenant governor, now the current governor of California. Tall, handsome dude, walking around. There were 5 owners outside on a patio, and everybody was like, who's that dude? Like, what is he doing? And at the time, he was talking to the owners about a potential. This is before the Rams moved to L.A., okay? So,
it was like 4 years ago. I remember that, yeah.
Yeah, you might have been there. I think you were wearing the same shirt as Mike Garafolo that day because you guys tend to do that every now and then. And then another one, Tom, it was kind of late night talking to Jerry Jones. There was a shot of Fireball sitting there, and I kind of did a shot of Fireball with Jerry Jones. That was kind of cool. Is there anything that you've seen that's compelling or interesting in the lobby there at the Biltmore?
Ask me tomorrow. Nothing happens on Sunday night, Dan. You know that. Everybody tucks themselves away. It's Monday. That's when the party really ramps up.
Oh, how smart are you, knowing that I'm not going to be here tomorrow to interview you on national radio and television. Tom Pelissero, you are a good man.
Leave it there.
Thank you for the time, my friend.
Thanks, Dan.
All right, he's one of the best in the business, based in Minneapolis.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.